It may sound random what I'm about to say, and this channel is dedicated to art, but what I'm going to tell you initially is going to seem like it has nothing to do with art. But trust me, it will tie into where I am at this particular moment as an artist. A few months back, I was riddled with crippling arthritis that was located in my back by my spine. And the doctor said that I needed either physical therapy or surgery. It wasn't a situation that was going to resolve itself, and my L1 was bulging ridiculously. And the inflammation that was causing this, it may be a leftover remnant of COVID. I've never been the same since COVID. I don't necessarily know that I've even mentioned in any of the podcasts that I had COVID, but I did, and it was devastating to my body. I was already fighting kidney issues, and I changed my diet. A couple of months before, I was diagnosed with kidney issue prior to 2020, and then I caught COVID. Initially, we thought that COVID was probably gonna cook my goose. Um, the inflammation that I was experiencing caused veins all over my body to be as thick as my finger. My my doctor, after being diagnosed, said, there's not much we can do for you if it's not a respiratory situation. Majority of the deaths from COVID were coming from um, lung-related illnesses that were associated with it. So I was forced to go home and tough it out. I was gone from my job for quite a while, and I had to self-treat. What I found is that my diet at the time may have saved my life. I was fasting, and I was also a vegan. There was no protein because protein was supposed to be the enemy of the kidneys. And if I was going to make it through that, then I would have to avoid protein at all cost. My diet consisted mainly of cabbage, cranberries, and broccoli. And occasionally I had cheese. I survived COVID, but I wasn't the same. My immune system fires off for absolutely no reason. Inflammation was still an issue, and I had no way of knowing when I was going to be knocked down again. The fatigue was worse than usual. I have always suffered from being tired, being sleepy, and people who know me understand why I suffer from being sleepy. But this was different. There was no energy. I couldn't think. I couldn't focus. And ultimately, I stopped making art for a period of time. I was eating once a day after COVID, and I was physically weak. I had lost weight, and one of my good friends on my job, she said, "You look strange." I guess my head seemed bigger than it should be on the body that it was mounted on. Eventually, I assumed that my diet was changing my physiology and that I was going to recover. I had gotten past COVID. I was down to 145 pounds, and I couldn't stay awake on the job at all. I was in jeopardy of losing my job. You're only as good as you are useful. And I made the decision to start eating again, 3 times a day, 2 times a day. But I didn't change my diet, and I began to gain an enormous amount of weight. That was initially what led me to go to my GP and find out what was the cause of this sudden 15-pound weight gain within 3 weeks. Well, I gained weight again. I assumed that my diet was doing something for me. And ultimately, it turned out that the fasting was more effective than the diet. What I was eating wasn't changing anything with my kidneys and wasn't changing anything with my overall health. I had essentially starved out COVID. I had to figure out what I could eat because at this time, in addition to my back giving me issues, my knees, the backs of my knees were swelling up. My knuckles had tendons that were popping out of place for absolutely no reason. And I was going through a plethora of health issues that I kept quiet. And I won't go into all of them, but I had to ask myself something. Should I stay the course of what I was doing, even though, according to noted health officials, the diet that I was on was the perfect diet? I wasn't able to do what I was built for, which was create. I had enough energy to go home and go to sleep, wake up and go to work, rinse and repeat. Somehow, some way, I found out about the carnivore diet. And you hear all of these different diets and different things, and they're usually fads that come and go. And it's a diet that I would see in my news feed and I would avoid it because kidneys. Well, if my kidneys were doing poor regardless of eating vegetables, and I discovered what oxalates were, and they contributed to kidney stones and other things that would stress my kidney, then I was in a bad situation. I couldn't make art. I couldn't move. Going to work and looking normal was excruciating. And I was at my wit's end. What have I actually got to lose? I switched to carnivore and something curious happened. I noticed that the brain fog had lifted. I noticed that back injuries that would become bouts of weeks of inflammation and physical therapy began to dissipate. I noticed that I began to lose weight. I noticed that my mindset, my depression, and some of my despair, which I hid from people, friends, family, began to alleviate. It began to go away. I noticed my muscle mass and my strength. I noticed when I urinated, I wasn't pissing foam, which is a telltale sign of kidney failure. And all while I was eating the foods that I was supposed to be eating, I peed essentially what was Guinness beer, complete with the foamy top. My doctor said I was making a big mistake. My doctor said carnivore would eventually destroy my kidneys. And here's the thing, perhaps my doctor is right. Perhaps my doctor knows best. Perhaps I should listen. But the one thing that changing my diet did is it changed my clarity and my ability to create art. From the time that I started this journey several months back to now, I've produced 20 paintings. My creative energy is the best that it's been since I was in my 20s. My physical endurance has returned. I am now able to do more than take a shower, go to sleep, wake up, and go to work. I'm no longer exhausted. And the illnesses that I had prior to COVID and prior to kidney disease are the only issues that I have to deal with now. I'm able to move in a way that I hadn't in years. I'm able to sit up. I'm able to paint. I'm able to sculpt without being rewarded with excruciating back pain. So this brings it full circle to where I am right now. I may be wrong about eating this diet. I may be wrong, and I may find out through a heart attack. I may find out through a stroke. I may find out through cardiac failure. I don't know. But what I do know is that it's afforded me time to do what I was made to do, which is create. And it may be true that eating a vegetarian-based, oxalate-filled diet might increase my longevity, but what of the quality of life? And I guess this is the point that I want to make. A moment of contentment, a moment of clarity, and moments that mean something far outweigh years of drudgery, years of pain. Longevity is nothing without meaning. Longevity is nothing without purpose. And when I was nearly incapacitated by the pain, my life had no purpose. All I knew is I didn't want to get rained on, so I willed myself to go to work. I hid the pain. I would sneeze and nearly collapse. And I was under the scrutiny of my job. If I couldn't produce, why should I expect them to keep me on? They're not a charity. And that was the sum of my life. Pain, sleep, pain. If I'm wrong, I'm perfectly okay with it. And if I drop dead from a heart attack, my last words will probably be, I didn't regret it. I look in my studio and I look at the work that's being produced. And if anything, it's given me a sense of urgency because I don't know. I'm very unsure. I don't know if my higher LDL and HDL will reveal a truth that I didn't look at. And it could result in me kicking out of here. But I look back at that studio. I look back at the pieces that I'm making. I look back at all of that, and it's worth it. I'm fulfilling my purpose, and my health and the ability to do is directly tied to it. Longevity without purpose is useless. A moment full of it is greater. This is your guy, the brave artist, talking a little bit about what really is important. If you like this content, please share, like, and subscribe, and let others know about this small but growing channel. Until the next time, be safe and take care.